Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crystal Core Radio Podcast. Brian and Chris here today talking about the state of the Criterion dungeons, how we feel about them, how the community's talking about them, and then we're also going to talk about my video that I released just yesterday about how I'm moving on from the world of Final Fantasy XIV. Two topics, some meaty stuff to be talking about here. I saw in our Discord, a lot of people were like, wait, Brian's not playing 14 anymore? Which, if you've been following your content, that's kind of like, that's not a revelation. It's nobody who's actively involved in the community is like, but what? But essentially there were some concerns. And so I tried to reassure them on Discord that, like, you told me when I told you that you're like, you've never been more in love with Final Fantasy XIV. You've never been having this much fun with the game in your entire history of playing it. So I was like, no, Chris has got you covered, you know, so we're going to still be doing that. But that's going to be kind of something we'll talk about, just some of the thoughts we've had, some of our plannings that we've got going on. If you guys are watching here on the YouTubes, be sure to check us out on Twitch. Chris is live, probably with Final Fantasy XIV, but you're going to get more than just 14 knowledge. This guy knows WoW, Guild Wars 2. So much so that anytime anybody talks to you about Guild Wars, they're usually like, what in the hell, you know?
I just made it into the top 50,000 global for achievements on Final Fantasy XIV. And I'm number 1,000 on Sargatanas.
Hell to the yes. So Chris has been crushing it. He's got some really interesting goals, so he's a great place to hang out with. And so, yeah, we'll talk more about that here in the second part. I want to bring up Criterion. This is the hard mode dungeons the community has been asking for a very, very long time. We finally now have access to the system, both the variant Criterion and the Savage mode. You and I have got to go hands-on with it. And as I work to finish up the final 6 controller guides, that's where I'm stepping in to put them to the test. You know, like finish up Dragoon, Monk, etc. But Chris, you've spent more time with the Criterion system than I have so far. What's your initial hot take?
I love it. I love it. I think it's overall a brilliant thing for the game. There's room for it to improve. Some of the ways I want it to improve would really be best if they were done after the second or third iteration anyway. So like we haven't even missed those kind of off ramps per se. Like, you know, if the system as a whole gets a really big like overall reward system, you would add that once we have more than one Criterion dungeon. So like maybe we won't get that and then I can be upset, but there's no reason to be upset now. I can be upset in the future if they choose not to do that. So like some of the things are just things I want later. There are some things I want now.
Like what?
So I would love to personally see it somehow tied to the power increase in a slight way. So either adding a new item level iteration just below Savage, maybe a couple levels low. We typically run in 5s, but there's no reason that we couldn't have like a 628. So that when you kill the first boss, that can help you with the second boss, because it turns out the first boss is asking a lot of non-Savage players. Either that or using it as a better tome source. The tomes per clear, like really you'd still need to go do your hunts. So if I am willing to grind Criterion each week, that should kind of resolve a pretty big chunk of my tomes. And that could be done through weekly challenge log. That could be done through having the final chest drop a ton of tomes, something like that. Or it could become a source of those kind of crafting ingredients a little bit. Or so maybe that's where like the twines come from or something. So I'm really not like the loot expert in how that doesn't break anything, but it looks like it's always going to be released roughly 8 weeks into the Savage grind, which means at that point, like a lot of groups have at least cleared the full tier. Plenty of people are clearing the first boss, the second boss multiple times. It doesn't feel outrageous if they're going to tune it this hard to put some item level, if they're going to make it item level relevant. If it's not going to be item level relevant, like if they're just going to sink us like Bozja, then it doesn't need to drop gear if they don't want it to. Like nothing matters at that point. If they want to have it be source of gear, that's fine. If not, that's fine, because we're all effectively doing the same thing. But it feels weird that I would be trying to prog Criterion, and the best thing I could do right now is go get some weekly lockout loot from Savage.
This is such a weird line, because there's a couple points you brought up. This is like 8 weeks after the Savage race. We do know that 6.4 and 6.5 will introduce more ass is what they're calling the Savage mode, another Sildian subterranean. Oh, you gotta love our acronyms within the community. But beyond that, like the fear that a lot of people have had with this piece of content is all of a sudden you introduce a manual kind of grind, and if this is actually your be all end all, in a reverse kind of way, what you just said is that there is kind of that. If you want to really be efficient, go to this other kind of piece of content. And it's such a, there's going to be this absolutely weird line for the game to kind of walk as it kind of fills out where this piece of content is going to sit in the long run. And when it comes down to it, I mean, even Dante in here saying, and doing a Savage rewards also really not worth it to go into Savage. Would this be something where, oh man, I think like when just listening to you talk, that the thing that just keeps popping over in my mind is how great would it be if just even materia added into your item level in that kind of way, and so in that visible way. I don't know if that makes it to where you're literally being able to get that additional power stat to go actually make it a little bit like easier, but in some form of step up progression of investment into the current gear that you have, because you go get that non-upgradable. But you brought up the twines, that would be an excellent source being of difficulty. But the question of difficulty then comes into, are we talking about just Criterion, or are we talking about Criterion Savage? Because what I'm hearing is that people are even struggling within just kind of that mid tier. And it's hard. It's weird for me to call it a mid tier, because I've heard people say that that's challenging enough. What do you think?
I mean, it's at least extreme. The difference with an extreme is that you have 7 other people, and so depending on the extreme, there are times that you could die and still see a clear, as opposed to when you drop things to 4, there's really a lot less room for that. When somebody dies in a 4-man, it hurts. And it's one of the reasons Yoshi P. City was hesitant to add dungeons to it, because he's like, that level of personal accountability drives friction. The item level thing is more of a UI choice. I do think that having materia reflect in the level would be cleaner, especially for things like Party Finder. When people go and put I-30 as the requirement for Party Finder, because what they're trying to do is a speed run, that sounds really logical, except when you have some classes that BIS technically takes them below 630. And so they've had access to all the Savage loot, and that's just literally not better. So I do think that kind of cleaning some of that up would help. Especially with newer players getting into that level of content. I personally don't care what the item level of mine is. That's just a general level of information. Like knowing the horsepower on a car doesn't determine your 0 to 60 time. Like, it's a good base number to know, but it's not the be all end all if you're really going to get really gritty about it. No, I think I want legitimate power to come from it. It's not that I want the loot from it to just drop at 628. It's that I want it to drop with 628 stats. Mm-hmm. It's the stats that I want. I want higher base stats. Having gotten my first relic, and that literally bypassing the EX weapon, which I hadn't gotten the weapon yet. Right, I want something like that. I want something to come in and come in. Maybe it could have come in at exactly the base level of the relic. And then we could have, through the Sildine subterrane, seen it kind of upgrade or something like that.
Do you think that upgrade might actually come down later? Because you said that, like, there's obviously where we see in the history and trajectory of any kind of patch schedule where, yeah, like that. Oh, turns out that was point 4 where they added that system in.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, this is a game that's really good about taking feedback in. Eventually, you have to be incredibly patient sometimes, but they really do listen, and they really have steered the game to try to satisfy as many people as possible in as many facets of the game as possible. And that has pros and cons. You talk about some of them in your kind of thoughts coming out of Endwalker. And there are pros and cons to all of that. So I'm not that worried about the loot being something they could never adjust, because all that is adding a loot table to a future Sildine subterrane, and that entire portion of that goes away. Mm-hmm. Not adding loot to the first one, from an analytics only standpoint, is really good. I think the first of anything, you want to know, do people like it? Do people not? Mm-hmm. Is it something people will do over and over? Is it not? And why? And if you start tying it to other things, one of the problems where I think World of Warcraft really struggles is that anytime they put a system in, people go, wouldn't it be cool if I could progress that doing other things? Yeah, that sounds really good. And World of Warcraft always answers yes. And they tie it to every other system. And the downside of that, as opposed to a more siloed game like Guild Wars 2, or in this case, Final Fantasy 14, where it feels like, oh, so I'm only doing this content for the sake of it, is that you can look at the percentage of players that are playing it and know that a really high chunk of that number legitimately enjoys it or is trying it for the first time. So if you just back out everybody who's got 10 tries or less, that's your core group that actually seems to like this. And you're not in danger of that being polluted by, oh, some of them just really like that it gives savage loot. Because players will optimize the fun out of anything. And so when you create a path to optimization, you pollute your data. So I don't necessarily get that worried about the first one, because first of all, they're capable of learning. They've proven it time and time again.
Yeah.
And second of all, if you were ever going to make the mistake of not enough loot, like the first one is the perfect time to do that.
Now I want to jump into Kippy's comment, but first, Chris, we've got some kind of big plans for the 30th. And also you've been working on some reaction content as well that should be rolling out across. You got some kind of strategy. Why don't you take a moment, as we've made it halfway through the Criterion discussion, to tell people what's happening.
I mean, TLDR, I'd like to post some videos to YouTube for a change. And so that's really it. Is I haven't posted in like 2 months. So we've been kind of we've been doing some guide stuff. People have known that I've been building kind of I have all of the quest text from Final Fantasy XIV now. So like I've been enjoying some of the discussions when we can go chase something down, asking like, hey, when was this said? And it's like, well, we can go find that. And it's not that information doesn't exist. That information is widely public through any number of wikis. I personally prefer Gamer Escape, but when you're trying to search when something was said, not just once, but how many times it was said across all of it, it's really slow to search wikis compared to having a PDF. All of the quest text up to patch 6.2 is only a 23 meg file. And so if you have that locally on your machine, you can just control F and it's awesome. It's awesome. But the goal is to grow that into something a great deal more. So I want to go populate that PDF with like every Q&A Yoshi P's ever done. Which is the reason that's not a publicly, people have been like, hey, can I get a copy of that? No. Because the goal is to go put a bunch of articles and stuff in there. And while I will have the sources and stuff, I don't think it's fair to just go distribute other people's websites. And so I want to just kind of pollute it into one big thing. And I really just want to treat it like a textbook that you can take notes in. So I've been working on that. And then the goal is to have that all turn into more YouTube content. So that's what I'm up to. You're up to way more.
Oh yeah, I'm always up to way more things.
So
but no, would you want to talk about the 30th and the giveaways that you've got planned?
Oh yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So on the 30th, guys, you guys blew through our subscriber goal for October. So we're gonna do a big long stream, and thank you guys. Everybody who's subscribed, I'll export a list right before that stream. Everybody who's publicly subscribed over on Twitch, which means they've been gifted a sub, they've shared Prime with us, any method of getting on that list. We're gonna say thank you to you by name, like we've been doing. And then we're gonna be doing giveaways, and you don't have to be sub for that. Just come hang out. So the first giveaway is this Alice doll, which I revealed like a week ago. And then late last week, I revealed that obviously we can't give away Alice unless we're also going to give away an Alphino. Now, unfortunately, they're going to be separated because I doubt they go to the same person. There's no rules against winning twice, so best of luck to you. But the third reward is not what we've revealed yet. And this is my wife's favorite. This is my wife's favorite. It's probably my favorite. Oh no, he's green.
He's green.
He's green.
It's green.
He's green.
We didn't plan for this.
Stand by.
Okay, I can see the green screen now.
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay, because on my screen I'm black.
Oh, now it's back.
Oh, nope.
It came
back. How is it back? It just keeps on surviving.
Can't kill that green screen.
Oh. None.
Background. We're doing it live, guys. We're doing it live.
Hey, there it is.
Oh no, you're
it's
frozen.
An otter.
You're frozen.
No, I'm not.
I'm here. I literally see you on my screen, frozen. You're
Better?
just no. He's disconnected too. That was, oh my gosh, so unplanned, and yet at the same time so absolutely funny. We're gonna show you our third reveal, and then literally like all right, I see him moving. I see him moving again. I see
here.
Yeah, you're here, and the green screen's up. So da 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 da.
It's an otter.
Oh, that was so freaking funny. I absolutely hope
an otter.
somebody
He's
clips
holding
that.
a little lamp. Yeah, he's holding a lamp.
If you guys haven't seen the notifications for like bits and subs over on Twitch, Chris has been taking the clips that you guys make and turning those into those notifications. And every time now that it happens, it literally kills me. Like any gift is always ends up having me almost rolling on the floor because it's just these moments from our history. You could literally see Chris's hair sometimes like growing rapidly depending on kind of what is happening over on Twitch. But yeah, guys, so that's going to be kind of the big plan. We'll be over here and on Twitch. Like that's like what we did last time. I'll be watching kids intermittently, so I'll be dipping in and out as I typically do, as in dad mode fashion. But yeah, so hopefully you guys come hang out for the 30th. It's going to be a big old bash. We open up voice comms as well, so it ends up being a lot of fun. Now, we talked about obviously gear progression. We talked about kind of the reception of it. What, like, as you've been playing it, like what are you getting a read from the overall community in terms of this piece of content? Because I've heard a lot of different mixed reviews, mostly all in the positive side. Something like I would summarize that if there was any kind of negative that I've seen over the last couple days, because as I've kind of consumed content, it's only negative in that it wasn't what I was expecting, but it's still actually really, really good. We're really happy that it's here, but just like you, kind of wanting some improvements. So what do you want to see down the road? But are you getting any other reads from the community, especially while you stream? Are people frustrated by the lack of rewards, or like what's the read there?
I mean, the general read when you first taste it is it's good. The jump to ASS has been high, but I think overall people are enjoying that. And as strategies start to come out that will take any of the puzzle aspects and will give ideally the most simplified solution is what we typically work to as a community. As we move to those simplified solutions, it should be fine, and that'll allow people to focus more on the DPS check and stuff, which if you don't have Savage gear, as tome gear drops and stuff like that, that will also get a little bit easier. So I think people will be able to get those clears. The fact that there's no real additional incentive for doing Savage beyond the sake of it, and that's not like, oh, Ultimate's like that. Yeah, but Ultimate still gives a title and a glowy weapon. Like this is truly nothing. I think there is a lot of frustration around the loot. Thank you, Tiffany, for 3 months in advance. And so I think the rewards tends to be most of it. Now, on the casual end, on the story mode, there was some frustration that there's really no reason to do it after you've done one of each path of the 12 paths. But in my mind, there's no reward when the expansions dropped for doing fates in a zone once you capped that vendor until you capped all the vendors and then the tickets added. So knowing that we're going to get a 545 and a 555 Criterion dungeon, they could go in if they wanted to and add a bicolor type system to it, either with this expansion or with next expansion's Criterion, because the other advantage of this system is that it doesn't sound like it's something Yoshi P wants to be one and done. And so to keep comparing it to WoW, because I think there's a lot of good news coming out of WoW lately. So to just rag on him for some past news. One of the big frustrations about Garrisons was that he basically said it cost them like an entire raid tiers of development resources. But then the question is, then why the hell did you let it die? Like, why would you invest that much to just burn it down? So yeah. People like or don't like Garrisons in their current state, but their current state is they only got one expansion of iteration. That expansion only got 2 patches. So imagine if Garrisons were 10, 12, 14 patches in, how much better they could be. And so I'm hopeful that with Criterion, like this is one of the issues I have with Halo Infinite, is they're adding maps, but like they're still at like 7 maps. So like you gotta do more than that. And I'm hopeful that
because they have done more than that. Like if we're gonna just dunk on Halo, as Halo fans, as people who are like, I would play Infinite now, but like their entire structure is just broken. And the thing is they've introduced such a great concept in buy a battle pass, keep your battle pass, that it's like, why can't you guys be the shining star? Why are you guys so upside down, right? And so welcome to my mini Halo rant, but they've done more. Like in the past, we've gotten multiple map packs. Like it's like, and here they are like, yeah, here's one for the arena, here's one for this other mode, like the big team, etc. And it's like, you guys used to be the pioneers. You guys used to be the city on the hill. You guys used to be the North Star. Now you guys don't even know what the hell you're doing. And you're like, locked into this weird placation to the point where you just don't release anything good. Anyway.
It's fine. Just play Master Chief or Halo 5.
Well, that's fine. The thing. Master Chief Collection is like, that's, I would probably just want to go back.
They're both included in Game Pass. So
exactly. Yeah. Thank you for Game Pass.
It's fine.
All right. So if
I
you
just
guys
uninstalled Halo Infinite, installed Halo 5, and I immediately liked Halo again. It's fine.
It's like,
so
now Kempy here says, like, as we, I wanted to bring him up because it says a pretty common complaint that they're seeing is, why am I getting all this Savage gear? There's no content to use in it. Now it's the opposite, and folks have just moved on to another excuse. Now that Savage content is valuable in this content because Criterion is actually level sync, gear sync capped at 635, which is the current cap, meaning as the gear score goes up, this will always present some level of challenge to the community at this tier. What do you think?
I think that what Kippy says would hold a little more weight for me if they were the same system. So when Baldesian Arsenal released, you and I had already bowed off the Eureka train. We got off at the second stop with everybody else. But there were many stops along the way. And when Baldesian, and I was like, why am I doing this? It's just going to expire with next expansion. And why am I doing this if there's no content to use it in, right? Mm-hmm. To use the exact phrase here. And then Baldesian Arsenal dropped, and it was like, oh, that's why. And I felt really dumb for getting off the train. Now, I don't regret previous me making the best decision based on the information at the time. But what did you and I do with Shadowbringers? We stayed on that freaking train, because if they had something else, I want to be able to do it. And so I was on that train day and date throughout. And but this is not Pandemonium Subterrane. Mm-hmm. It's not only narratively in a different place, but it's a totally unrelated system. You don't have to have cleared any quests from Pandemonium to do it. And so to have the gear from System 1 be mandatory for gear in System 2 would be weird. Now, it's not totally mandatory. You can do it in 610s or Tome gear. But it doesn't feel as linked. It feels linked because PvE is like the big tie that binds. But like technically at that point, you would argue that like, oh, higher item level helps me clear my tribe quests faster each day. Like it doesn't, it's super loose as a connection in my opinion. So I think they're separate complaints. Is why. So I don't think that it's moved on to another excuse. I think it's a totally different frustration around a totally different connection game. Within the context of like, all of these complaints are within PvE of a singular MMORPG. So it's already a very niche complaint. But they are two separate niche complaints.
Now, as I say, and also not having a checkpoint in Ass, which is thank you, Yoshi P, for that name. This is a little bit of a letdown, only because you have 90 minutes to prog, and it takes like 20 minutes to get to the final boss with a solid group. Then they disband. Do you think that also is going to just get solved with time as more people's strategies get developed, that if it takes 20 minutes to get to the final boss, that we see that step itself down? On that note, outside of the final boss, though, like we've seen dungeons become so, like the normal dungeons become so streamlined that it's like, oh, I usually get this down 10, 12 minutes maybe. And then if it's a slow group, then it's like 20 minutes or something like that, where this is actually requiring a little bit more of a time investment. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, first of all, maybe it could increase the time. They know how, they have that tech for that. They already increased the time after duty complete to allow you to do things like screenshots and distribute loot. So like that already takes place. So maybe it could increase the time that offsets that, because I think the problem with the optimized strategies is that will help some groups get there faster. But then what will the other side of that is what will happen is a group that wipes once or twice to the first boss will get disbanded earlier, because people will have less tolerance. They'll go, well, my last group did this in 12 minutes and you're pushing 18 minutes, and they'll bail. So I think you'll offset some of the gains there. I don't know. I think it just comes down to like, what's the benefit? What's the rewards? So I think just some challenge log stuff that helped give tomes each week, right? For killing those ads.
Oh, wow.
People who have never ever experimented with Fractals or Mythic Plus, like ads can be dangerous. Ads can be dangerous. And ads we just had that video go live not that long ago about like what happens when a tank wants to pull wall to wall, or when a party wants to pull wall to wall and the other isn't true. What happens with that? You know, you pull, you tank it. Like who's really at fault here? And ultimately what it comes down to is that there is a significant portion of the player community that considers dungeon ads literally trash, like as the term. It's just garbage. It's nothing. There's no reason to be concerned about it. And that's not true when you move into hard mode dungeons. As a matter of fact, in hard mode dungeons, when you slightly modify things, like you do the Destiny 2 bullet sponge mentality, it hits harder, it takes more hits to kill. On bosses that have avoidable mechanics, it actually, like if you're already in the habit of avoiding mechanics perfectly, it doesn't make them that much harder. It just means execute for longer or execute cleaner. But on ads, it really adds up quickly. On the trash, like it makes that really hard. And like when I've done Mythic Plus, like for the bosses, I feel like we've just pulled it. But for the ads, I feel like we've had to stop and say, okay, what are we doing here? Because you're on a timer. And we're going to spend time talking about this because the order we pull these things in matters.
It's really interesting. Obviously, Naz is continuing to keep us up to date, talking about how it's slow pull, and the tank pulled the first two ads and died instantly just from auto attacks. So they're not messing around. Which that's what I think we've been wanting. I think that's what we've been wanting in terms of that hard mode content. It's just going to be an adjustment in the expectation, right? All of a sudden when those things start, actually becoming a threat. I hope that's, long-term successful. And in terms of it, I think essentially one of the things that will be interesting to see is that as we only have kind of 3 difficulties, you have variant, you have Criterion, and you have, Savage. My thought is that my hope would been, and I don't know if we'll see this over the course of the next couple of weeks or months, but the Criterion and the Savage have a set path where variant has different paths. It'd be interesting to see if, like, over week or whatever, the Criterion's path would be updated or something like that, so you end up having a little bit of variability. But in that variability, you would probably end up easily incentivizing, like, oh, this is the week where it's really easy to get your Criterion clear because mechanic wise, this, that, or the other thing, people will optimize the fun out of it. But what do you think?
I mean, so 14 or Guild Wars and WoW are just 2 examples of systems where I've messed around on these. Fractals and Mythic Plus already have this, and there are weeks that people groan and there are weeks that it's fine. And you're like, oh, what an easy week. But ultimately, like, if the reward structure is do it this many weeks in a row, people do it anyway. And so if you end up tying this to relic progression, if you end up tying this to a weekly challenge log, if you end up tying this to collect all 12 Criterion paths or something like that, then a system like that would be fine.
Your challenge log idea is actually really freaking solid. Like the idea of adding that in as a part of the system, I don't know if it's day 1, but it's like down the road where it's like, hey, we've added challenge log stuff for this stuff. Here's tomes, here's pot shards, all whatever the reward structure ends up being. Like, that could be really interesting to see, because you could tie it to ad kills, and like, even if you don't get a win, oh cool, we've made some progress, and it doesn't end up feeling like it's all or nothing, which ends up being a personal frustration of mine. It's like when the reward is tied behind a clear and you're not getting your clear, I think that creates tension within any kind of raid group or even party.
Yeah, I mean, you could make it 4 boss kills or 5 boss kills, and if it happens to be 5 hamsters because you never get further than that, that's fine. Yeah, I don't know exactly. I think something has to change with the reward structure, but like I said, that could already be in place. Like, they could add that with 5.35 or 6.35 with the relic being tied to it, and it would look like an answer to a question we're asking now, even though it was already planned. So like, it's possible the answers to these questions are already coming, regardless of us asking them. But we happen to be playing a game that is very good at taking feedback. So if they're not planned, they're probably listening to us right now. So I'm not that worried about it. It's just like things that I would love to see mature as the system matures. I don't think the answer is, well, it wasn't perfect out of the gate, so drop it. I do think they need to, and I like that there's not a requirement to do it every week, so that if you miss a week, it's not a big deal. So I would be careful adding rewards that started to tie you too much to, there's already people that feel like they need to do Unreal every week. There's already people that feel like they have to cap tomes every week. And I don't think the goal should be to add as many weekly lockout things as we can to 14, so that somebody feels like, well, if you didn't do all 27 things, you should probably just unsubscribe. Like, it just, I don't want to get to that point. So I do like that it feels like, do it when you want. And if you don't have the gear score to do it with your friends now, and you guys want to wait until you get 3 more tome pieces each, you can just put the pause on it, and it doesn't hurt you. So it's It's good. Do you not have to fight the ads to reach the boss? Okay, so Christopher's asking how this works, because we've been talking about this for a bit, and there might be some people listening but a little bit confused. So basically, there is variant where we go through a story mode. This can be done solo up to 4, and it just scales accordingly. And it's honestly not a difficulty where the ads of the boss matter, and you get to make choices, and you go through with an NPC who says, like, I would go left, but you do what you do. And so it kind of steers you through. The next step of Criterion, there's no variability, and what you have to do is you have to clear all of the ads before a boss unlocks, and you're on a timer. If you wipe during any time of that, they stay dead. Anything you've killed stays dead, and so you just slowly kind of slam yourself into it, and you're trying to progress through. And the timer is the instance lockout, which sounds like it's not that much of a timer in a normal dungeon, but in here, like 90 minutes really will be. And then you have to clear the boss and you work your way through, but everything stays dead unless you have to reset the lockout. In Savage, you have to clear it all in one go. It's like Delibram Savage. If you die, the whole instance restarts. And then the ads and everything have like an echo that they pick up. Like they get kind of mad if you take too long. So it gets harder for taking longer. So it starts to act as like a soft enrage. But there's no real incentive to do Savage other than saying you did Savage. So that's kind of how it works. Basically, you have 24 minutes from the first pull in Savage is what Pride says here.
Yeah, so we'll continue to keep you guys up to date, because
I haven't killed the hamster yet.
You haven't killed the hamster yet?
No, I spent a lockout fighting a hamster. And had a blast getting my face kicked in. We made it to the 8 brooms and stuff, but now I understand their strategies and stuff coming out, so maybe it would be easier if I went back in.
Yeah, we'll see.
A little more knowledge.
We'll see. What's your plan? What do you stream today? 14?
It's Monday. I need to progress my dragon in Guild Wars, but we got started in 14 by progressing my story alt, because I'm still working my way through stories. So that goes first every day.
Okay.
And then on to Guild Wars.
You got any reaction content planned for the day that people can be excited about?
I have a bunch pulled up, so as we get time, I need to see how big this dragon step is.
Yeah. Okay, cool.